Welcome. My name's Adam Sotak. I am the Associate Director for UNC Rural, and welcome to Carolina Engagement Week 2024. This is UNC Rural, Building Strong Rural Community Campus Partnership. UNC Rural is a project of the Office of Provost here at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Quite simply, our mission is to strengthen community campus partnerships that advance well-being in rural North Carolina. Our work brings together rural communities and campus members from UNC Chapel Hill in mutually beneficial ways. We make connections, provide funding, and supply resources that make partnerships more effective. And the results of that are twofold: better communities and a better university. As most of you are probably aware, North Carolina is a largely rural state. 78 of our 100 counties are considered rural, and 1 in 3 of our state's residents live in rural areas. That adds up to over 3.7 million people in the state of North Carolina who call rural North Carolina home, making us the second largest rural state population-wise in the United States, only behind Texas. We also boast the largest American Indian population east of the Mississippi River, with 1 federally recognized tribe and 8 state recognized tribes. Also related to young people, a couple of facts. One is that according to the UNC Chapel Hill Office of Admissions, 40% of first-year students at University of North Carolina Chapel Hill are from rural areas. And 45% of our rural residents in the state of North Carolina under 18 are people of color. We have a growingly diverse population in our rural, suburban, and urban areas. UNC Rural was really born and emboldened out of the Carolina Next strategic plan here at the University of North Carolina. The reason being that this is part of the university's commitment to serve all of North Carolina, including our rural areas. So it was put into the UNC strategic plan that this is a part of our commitment as a public university to serve all of North Carolina and to strengthen the connections and relationships we have in rural communities across the state. UNC Rural is a pan-university resource. That means that we work with partners all across the university and with communities all across the state of North Carolina. If you're interested in rural issues, then we want to work with you. What we're really about is trying to strengthen those community campus partnerships and be a stronger connector to improve communities. And this visual here on this slide shows just some of the partnerships that UNC Rural has had over the past year or so. In fact, many of the presenters and sessions for Carolina Engagement Week will include collaborators and partners with UNC Rural. So you can see here that we're really trying to do whatever we can to extend our partnerships and reach across the state. Last but not least, these are some specific programs and ways that UNC Rural is going about our work. So you may see some items here that are interesting to you. First and foremost, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, we want to stay in touch with you. So if you don't already receive our monthly newsletter, please sign up for that so that you can get information from UNC Rural. We're doing things like working with others to do a more robust Engaged Scholarship series where we look at aspects of community campus partnerships, sessions like the one today with our panelists. We're also going across the state of North Carolina, and we're really trying to go out to rural communities, listen more, and bring back the highlights and what we're hearing to the university so that we can be a stronger connector. One thing that I'm very excited about that's happening right now as well, for example, is we're doing the first round ever of our Rural Research Engagement and Advancement Fund Awards. And these are small grants that are offered to community campus partnerships working in rural areas. As a matter of fact, the recipients of those awards will be highlighted at a reception this Friday at 5:30 at the UNC School of Government as part of a culmination of Carolina Engagement Week. So these are just some of the ways that UNC Rural is going about doing our work. And again, we want to stay in touch with you moving forward. Now we're moving into the best part of today's session, and one that I'm very much looking forward to, and that is our panel. So I wanted to quickly introduce our three panelists that we have with us today. Dr. Jada Brooks. Jada is an associate professor and Ross Distinguished Term Scholar in the UNC School of Nursing and adjunct faculty in the Environmental Sciences and Engineering Department in the Gilling School of Global Public Health. She lives on the traditional homelands of the Lumbee, Tuscarora, and Sherrall in Robeson County, North Carolina, where she serves on the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina IRB. Jada also currently serves as the co-director for UNC Rural. Next, we have Angella Dunston. Angella is a proud product of rural America and rural North Carolina, having grown up in Warren County on the border of Virginia and North Carolina. Currently, she collaborates with nonprofits that are mission-driven to address issues of inequity for marginalized communities and create systemic change. Dunston previously served as Director of Community and Faith-Based Outreach for a former governor of North Carolina. In that role, she was responsible for building a network of statewide community and faith-based leaders who address challenges faced by underrepresented communities. Prior to that position, Dunston worked with community leaders and policymakers to develop sustainable solutions to address the injustices faced by individuals and families across the state. Dunston's a recipient of numerous awards and honors, and in her spare time, which is kind of funny to think you would have any spare time, Angella, she serves on a variety of boards and commissions, including the North Carolina League of Conservation Voters, the Warren County Environmental Action Team, Lillian's List of North Carolina. Last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Al Richmond, MSW and Executive Director of Community Campus Partnerships for Health. CCPH and Al is a global thought leader advocating for the increased role of communities in research and public health. In his role as Executive Director of CCPH, Al is advancing the organization's commitment to social justice and health equity. Al serves as Principal Investigator of Patient Engagement, enhancing culturally responsive research funded by Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, PCORI, and as co-principal investigator of ensuring ethical community-engaged research. Al provides leadership to multiple academic research projects. I know that he is a valued partner and advisor to UNC Rural, and he holds a Master's of Social Work from the Ohio State University, and he's a certified facilitator in many different elements of his work as well. So, with that, I am going to now begin our panel Q&A by asking our first question. And we'll start with you, Al, and then we'll go to Angella, and then we'll go to Jada, okay? And this first question is, why did you begin working in community campus partnerships? And tell us about some of your early experiences.
Good morning, and thank you for the invite. So that is such a difficult question. It's supposed to be so easy. I think for me, when I reflect on the question, it's really about who I am as an individual. At the core, I am an individual who really values collegial relationships. I thrive so much in the space of hearing from others, hearing their voices. It just energizes me. It provides me with insights and perspectives that otherwise I would not hear and not have an opportunity to really benefit from. So fundamentally, I think it's who I am. But on a professional level, an organizational level, the work that I've done, and I think back 20 years of partnerships with academic partners, including many at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, the way we've approached the work has been that of recognizing that the work is so difficult and oftentimes very challenging, and that the only way to really achieve the desired outcomes and have the meaningful impact is really through partnerships. So the work that I've been engaged in really necessitates partnerships. So as an example of that, I can think about early work that I've done with colleagues at the University of North Carolina focused on prostate cancer. This work goes back almost 20 years. And in that work, we sought to address the disparate impact of prostate cancer among African American men and others in the state of North Carolina. What we had was a situation where we had a lot of concern from community leaders about this issue. Really questions regarding why we were seeing the disparities in North Carolina. What could we do to change that? What could we do to have greater impact? And it was through partnerships that we launched a number of initiatives focused on prostate cancer. It's through that partnership that we developed the Prostate Cancer Ambassador Training Program that was primarily focused on training community partners in rural communities. So that's just one example of how I've really embraced partnerships and have brought together a deep-seated interest and passion on prostate cancer and concern for health disparities, but really needed the resources that my colleagues at UNC offered.
Morning, everyone, and thank you, UNC Rural, for the opportunity to be a part of Carolina Engagement Week. I guess my history dates a little bit further back, and the image that you showed earlier of myself is a picture of me standing in a rural area of Warren County, and it's actually the site of the landfill dump that occurred in the late 70s, early 80s. For those of you who aren't familiar with Warren County, we are known as the birthplace of the environmental justice movement in America. In the early 1970s, a company dumped a cancerous toxic chemical along the side of the road of many counties throughout the state of North Carolina. And when the soil in which this chemical was dumped was dug up, the state of North Carolina had to make a decision as to where the soil would be placed. I'm told there were a number of choices of places where the soil could have been placed. But Warren County, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is a majority minority community. It's a high poverty, low income area. And unfortunately, my community was chosen as the site to dump the soil. So for many, many weeks and months, individuals not only who lived in Warren County, but across the country came to Warren County to protest the dumping of the soil in a majority minority, high poverty area. Because again, the state had many options as to where it could have dumped the soil, but it chose Warren County. And so for me, I always say that was the beginning of my training as an advocate, protesting alongside my parents, church members, mentors like former Congresswoman Eva Clayton, Dolly Burwell, women who were very much a part of the movement, and women who decided that they were not going to sit down and allow their community to be done unjustly. Unfortunately, in this Goliath versus the small person story, Warren County did not win. We are the site of the dumping of PCB. And for 40 plus years, we've been continuing to protest not only the fact that we were dumped upon, but the other injustices that came along with being deemed a site of a chemical dump. So I always say my training as an advocate began then and has continued throughout my history. As you mentioned in the introduction, Adam, I'm working with communities all across the state like mine who have been unfairly or unjustly done in many, many ways. I'm doing a lot of work now in northeastern North Carolina, helping to ensure that equity is bestowed to many of those communities. And so being a part of community campus partnerships started in Warren County, but has continued throughout. I was fortunate enough to be a part of a project that addressed the issue of COVID, ensuring that individuals who didn't have access to test kits, but also individuals who didn't have the opportunity to be tested, was addressed. And UNC was a part of that project, as well as AL and the Community Campus Partnership Initiative. And so that was another opportunity for me to understand the value of coming together as a community to address issues with a university system. But again, as I said, throughout my entire career, and I call it a career, or you say a passion career as an advocate, I've been able to work with UNC to address many of the disparities that exist in rural, high poverty communities like my own, and so many, not just in North Carolina, but across the country.
Thanks so much, Angela, for sharing that powerful history, story, and how those community campus partnerships have been a part of that. Next, we'll go to Dr. Brooks. Jada.
Hi, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to be able to have the opportunity to talk about my own work in the community. But I must say that it's hard to follow Al and Angela, who just talked about their work. But I wanted to say that, I really began working or wanting to work in the community. The reason why I wanted to do this started when I was a young child. So in early childhood, I really recognized that I had this passion for my community and understanding disparities at the time that I didn't know what disparities were. I started seeing people suffering in my community and wanted to learn more about that and the factors that were contributing to those disparities. So I feel like it's always been a passion of mine to want to understand where disparities were coming from and what I could do as an individual to make a difference in those disparities. From that, I wanted to make a positive impact on my community or at the community level. I knew that I wanted this impact to be a real world impact and that I wanted it to extend beyond just individuals that I would, see on a day-to-day basis, such as, being in a provider's office. And one of the things that kind of led to that later in my undergraduate training or shortly after my undergraduate training was an opportunity to serve as a research assistant on a statewide project in North Carolina to improve mammography utilization and breast pathology outcomes for American Indian women. And this opportunity, I was able to travel all across the state and develop relationships with different tribal communities and urban organizations. And I realized that I valued learning more about local expertise and knowledge and how, this local indigenous wisdom could be used to further enhance my understanding of disparities and what that meant to communities. And so just realized that I'm almost nearing my time and wanted to share that, it was really about the passion, the real world impact, and the local expertise and knowledge that led me to begin working in community campus partnerships.
Thank you, John, for sharing, for everyone for sharing. What strikes me is also just the diversity of very important issues that all of you all described. And I know that's only the tip of the iceberg, which might environmental justice, prostate cancer, women's health, etc. And I know, and it just shows just a few of the ways that these partnerships can really impact people's lives in very real and important ways. The next question that we have for the three of you is a very important one. What can UNC Chapel Hill do better, and or how can campus partners be helpful allies to rural communities? And let's start with you again, Mr. Richmond.
Thanks, Adam. So just listening to Jada and to Angela really made me think about the fact that academics all of us need to understand and appreciate the history of local communities. When you talk about the fact that North Carolina has the largest American Indian population east of the Mississippi, people don't think of that in North Carolina. And oftentimes they think of maybe just Cherokee, a federally recognized tribe, nation, but they don't think about the other American Indian communities and nations in this state. And so if you just move into North Carolina, you just recently, a recent transplant, you're new to the region, you don't really understand that. Angela described the dumping of PCPs in Warren County. If you're new to this region, you probably don't know that, right? And yet it's less than an hour and a half from Raleigh or Chapel Hill. So I think that the most important thing for people to really do is take the time to get to know local communities. If you're interested in working in a local community, start with time spent in the community, talking to elders, talking to people about the history. What happened not just yesterday or last year, but what occurred 25 years ago, 50 years ago? What are the issues that continue to really provide, I would really say, community trauma in local areas? And understanding that really helps you to frame and think about these partnerships that you want to launch in local communities. If you don't understand that and appreciate that and value that, then you're really going to be at a loss for how to work in a local community. And then finally, to approach communities from an assets-based perspective. Warren County, Robeson County, the region of southeastern North Carolina, every community has assets. And that's the approach that we all should have in working in partnerships.
Well said. Thank you very much. Angela.
Well, I want to echo what Al mentioned about knowing the history of a community. North Carolina is now, or I think something that I read said, one of the fastest growing states in the country. Everybody wants to come to North Carolina. And oftentimes people come based upon what they may read and not understanding the history of Warren County and many other communities like Warren County, not understanding the context of the historical inequities that have existed in many of our rural communities. And so before we start to talk about how we want to resolve the problems that exist in many of the communities, it's important to understand the history of those communities. And then once we understand the history of those communities, to develop trusted and authentic, and I want to repeat, trusted and authentic relationships with those communities before you start to do work in those communities. Because again, yes, I'm located, or we're located in rural communities, but those rural communities bring many, many rich assets to the table. And understanding the value of them before we start to talk about creating partnerships is very important. And I also want to say, I hope you see my Carolina blue beads. I am a Carolina alum. And so being an alum, of course, is my university, and I love my university, and I want it to be great. But I also want it to be exceptionally great when it works in rural communities and communities throughout the state, so that UNC can be successful, but also so that those communities can be successful. And so what I would say to those of us who are working to develop projects or initiatives, let's create trusting and authentic relationships as we do this work. And then working together, we can all be successful.
Thank you, Angela. And next, back to Dr. Brooks.
Thank you, Adam. Yes, I really find that what Alan and Angela just shared is, exactly along the lines of what I wanted to talk about. I think there's also other ways that we can, as campus partners, help rural communities. I think about myself in terms of how long I've been doing this work. It's started in 2001, so going on 22 years. And I think about the times that I drove from like Angela, I'm an alumni of UNC Chapel Hill. I received my master's in the Department of Epidemiology. And I remember driving during that time back and forth to Chapel Hill. And actually over the years since then, and how I thought about what I was traveling to UNC for. And it was to learn more about the institution and to learn more about, what access to resources they had and to be able to bring those resources back to my community. And so I think one of the ways that campus partners can help rural communities is to help communities identify and access resources that they may otherwise not have access to. This also includes expertise that they may not have within the community, but there may also be experts within the community that can be helpful to campus partners as well. So that also has to be recognized. I think beyond that, that there's this cultural exchange and understanding that needs to occur. And this is related to what Al and Angela was saying about partnering with local organizations. And I think that, having these conversations at the local level for campus partners to actually travel to rural communities and talk with community members there about, what's occurring in their community, learning more about the history, as Al was saying, and Angela, about what's happened in the state and what is continuing to happen and how that's impacting communities and what resources, tying that back to the resources that the university has access to, how can we utilize those resources to actually make a difference within rural communities. And with that cultural exchange and understanding, I think it also calls to collaborative problem solving. And we need to recognize that we need to recognize and value different perspectives when it comes to problem solving, both from the community level and the academic level. And how do we work together to identify and address problems in a way that values the different partners that are coming together to the table. I think beyond that we also need to be innovative and help implement effective strategies that are sustainable. And I know oftentimes, researchers seek grant funding to better understand a problem or to intervene on a problem, but oftentimes the communities are left, I apologize for that, the communities are left without any sustaining impact or from those research projects. And so I think being better poised to think about how we can sustain the impact of successful interventions is important. Yeah, I think that's it. So thank you.
Adam, if I could just jump in, because Jada just raised something that just kind of perked my spirit. That last piece about ensuring that once a research project or an initiative is completed, that the university system doesn't just, completely forget that there was ever a partnership there, because partnerships and relationships are two-way. What you don't want to happen is that a university system or some other entity receives all it needs. Oftentimes there is research funding that comes along with that. Just realizing the value of what the community brings to the table and creating a sustainability plan for, our grant may be up in 2 years, but we want to create a framework of success that will allow the community to continue to thrive. And so just including that in the processes when we work on projects is something that I think that as a university and as my university, that we keep in mind when we do work in rural communities. Just wanted to add that point.
Yeah, well said. And Angela, I wonder if you want to kind of just keep the ball rolling as we go into our last question here around well, how can, folks as potential community, campus partners, how can they find out more about what's possible, and how to maybe get more involved in an authentic community campus type project?
Well, I say one way is to call Adam Sotak and his team and say, I'm interested in what you all are doing with rural communities across the state. But no, seriously, to stay connected to UNC and specifically UNC Rural and the initiatives, the wonderful initiatives that you all are doing across the state. I'm very familiar with some work that you're doing in other parts of the state of North Carolina with rural communities, and very pleased with the feedback that I'm getting from individuals about your work. So I would say to you to keep that up. But I would also say to someone who's an advocate like myself, be active about your engagement. Go to UNC's website, visit the campus if you can, and find out what's happening and see how you can be actively engaged in this change. I'd also say, as I said before, and again, my alumni, that UNC is not a bubble, and you all cannot just operate in Chapel Hill or the Triangle. We've got to be out and about throughout the state of North Carolina, whether that's Western North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina, the southern part of the state, so that you all can know what's happening in those communities. And so I reiterate that. But also the key piece, and I've said this to you before, Adam, authentic relationships. You can't just parachute in and parachute out. It's got to be about developing long-term and authentic and trusted relationships if you want to bring about real change. And so again, stay, engaged with what UNC is doing. Visit the website, visit campus if you can, but get to know someone who's on UNC's campus, specifically with UNC Rural, and find out what's happening and find out how you as an individual or you as an organization can support the work that you all are doing. And so those are just some suggestions.
Thanks so much. And Al, how about your thoughts on this?
Wow, that's a lot. Thanks, Angela. Thanks, Jada. I would say that there's probably not an issue that I can imagine that someone would have an interest in that there's not expertise and experience at UNC. There's someone there who has an interest in that. It can be students, an undergrad or graduate, it could be a postdoc, it could be faculty, administrators, endowed professors. So I just want to offer one tip around to community partners who are interested in working with UNC. That is Angela talked about visiting the website. I would actually say just use any search engine and just put in an area of interest and put UNC and see what comes up. And you will probably find there's someone at UNC has a similar interest or has done research in that area. That's just a practical tip on what you can do, is to find out and match your interest with the interest of someone at UNC.
Thank you, Adam. And Jada, could you wrap us up with some thoughts on this?
It's so interesting how like-minded we are when it comes to our answers to these questions. One thing that I feel that both community partners and campus partners can do is to attend community engagement events such as these and the events that are planned throughout the Carolina Engagement Week. I think that's a great opportunity for both parties to learn more about what's going on at UNC Chapel Hill, learn more about the different communities that are involved in ongoing projects and partnerships, and also to network and initiate conversations and build relationships during those events. I also want to kind of present, I appreciate what Al and Angela said about community partners visiting the website and Googling and trying to find out who is at UNC and what they're doing. I want to pose a little bit of a different angle in terms of what campus partners can actually do to engage community partners or to collaborate with them in an effective and authentic way. And one thing that I tend to recommend for folks that I collaborate with, especially within the most recent years, is for my community, well, not community partners, but my colleagues to actually come and visit Robeson County and to learn more about the local history here, to attend events such as powwows and other local events that are going on. I encourage them to visit the local museum on UNCP's campus, and every time that they're here in the area, just because, you know, the history is so rich, and visiting one time, you won't learn everything about Lumbee culture and Lumbee history. We also have the tribal administrative building, and that I encourage them to visit as well, and just to visit with my community partners and to build relationships with them themselves, rather than me being the bridge between my colleagues and community partners. So I think as academics and researchers, we have an obligation to, like Angela said, get outside of that, you know, bubble that we exist in oftentimes, and go out into the community to really learn directly from the community about who they are, what's going on, and just to take more of an initiative in that, rather than relying on community partners to, you know, come to us at UNC. I think that that's really the key takeaway that I'd like to leave with the participants here today.
Jada, I just remember, I think the first time I met you was in DC, actually, if you recall. And we were on a panel together, and I heard your beautiful voice, and I was like, you are from North Carolina. I recognized that dialect and that really beautiful voice. And I thought, oh my God, I know her. I don't know her, but I recognize that. And it just called to my mind. Recently, I read an article about how North Carolina is losing dialects, right? Because of so many people, as you mentioned, Angela, moving in. So those of us who are kind of native, we have a sense of where people are from in this state based on how they talk, right? There's a kind of a mountain sound. There's a deep South sound in the southeastern region of North Carolina. But you only know that when you get out and listen to people and move among people, and you hear them in a very relaxed way talking among themselves. And I that just made me think about that, Jada. And I was like, she's from North Carolina, and I'm from North Carolina. And there was a instant kind of camaraderie that we had as being native North Carolinians.
Yes. Angela, would you like to, were you going to add something?
Well, I wasn't going to let Jada give Lumberton and Pembroke a plug without saying come visit Warren County, because we as well, being the home of the environmental justice movement and so many other things, there's so much rich history and so many opportunities for individuals to learn about our community. And so I invite all of you to be a part of that, as well as other parts of the state. But Al, you did trigger something. You know, it's just like family. You know, I say, well, that's a Dunston. I know a Dunston when I hear a Dunston, or I see a Dunston. So we know a North Carolinian when we hear a North Carolinian. And it's such a beautiful thing that we can share in each other's rich history and appreciate our perspectives and where we come from. And so again, UNC Rural and all your team, we're here. We want to help you get out in communities. We encourage you to do that. If there's anything that I can do and others like me who want you to be all across the state can do to support that, please know that I'm here and we're here, and we encourage you to explore other parts of rural North Carolina.
Thanks so much, Angel. I think that's just a wonderful way to kind of wrap up the conversation. I want to thank yourself and Jada and Al for sharing with us today and giving us lots of things to continue to think about. Thank you all again for tuning in. Please be in touch with us if you need anything, and we will do our best to serve those needs. So with that, we'll see you later. Have a great week.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, UNC Rural.
Thank you.